What is the most awkward moment you ever witnessed? I'll start. I went to lunch with my wife. Our waitress turned out to be a woman I went to high school with. I said hi to her, and before I could introduce my wife, the waitress said, "Oh, is this your mom?" I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Happened to me while I was living in Florida. My very mild-mannered mom came to visit. Doing the typical touristy thing, we went to eat at a nearby beachside restaurant in Siesta Key called AskReddit Stories. While sitting there with her, a waitress came over and brings me another order of the drink I was already drinking. She said, "The couple up there sent this over to you," and pointed to a couple who looked to be a little older than me. Uncertain of the whole situation, I just told the waitress thank you. My mom asked me if I knew that couple, and trying to downplay a weird situation, I just told her I thought I recognized them, which I certainly didn't. Throughout our lunch, I noticed the couple smiling and kind of nodding and waving at me. I was polite and just semi-smiled back at them. A few minutes later I noticed that the couple is coming towards our table. They approach and my mom is all smiles and giggles and asking them where they're from and blah blah blah. After the polite conversation, they both turned and looked at me directly in the eye, and the girl asks, "Girl, so, do you do couples?" Me: "I'm sorry, guy, do you do couples?" Me: "I don't think I understand what you're asking." Girl: "Do you swing with other couples?" Mom: "What? You know these people?" Me: "What? No, mom, no way." Girl: "Really? Have you ever thought about it?" Mom: "Have you?" Me: No. Then, just staring all around at each other. Guy: "Well, if you ever think about it, here's our number." He puts their number on my drink coaster and they leave. My mom still doesn't believe that I didn't really know them. To this day. TLDR. My mom thinks I'm a swinger. My wife's stepfather received a W-2 in the mail from a strip club addressed to his daughter. He was devastated, especially because he's a very conservative evangelical Christian. Fast forward 2 years and I'm sitting with the two of them at the 1-year birthday party of my niece. The party is a little dull, and I say something like, "This is a crazy party. I hear a strippers are going show up later." The dad nonchalantly says, "We're already sitting with one." To which he replies innocently, "Are you calling me a stripper, dad?" Then he goes, "I got your W-2 from the strip club." Sitting between them at that moment, as the tension was building and panic was setting in, was overbearingly awkward. Her eyes get huge and she yells, "You've known this entire time and never said anything?" It doesn't matter, the money was good and I was just a cocktail waitress. I swear, I didn't dance. Really, I was just trying to poke fun at a lame kids party, not start an intervention. I went to Yuck Yucks Comedy Club, and I had aspiring comedians as part of the show. This 300-pound girl gets up on stage, gets a laugh with her first joke, but it's downhill from there. After several jokes with no laughs at all, and some awkward silence, she says, "Hey guys, I'm so fat I sweat gravy." Even the kitchen and bar went quiet. She turned red, looked around and made a quick exit. I felt really bad for her. I do give her credit for getting on stage, even though it was probably the beginning and end of her comedy career. There is nothing worse than watching a comedian bombing on stage. My parents always told me a story about when they were out at dinner once. They saw a couple on a first or second date. The lady was wearing a wool sweater and she leaned over the table for some reason and the little candle lit her sweater on fire. The awkwardness then ensued as the flame was centralized on her chest, and being their first date, the man was extremely hesitant to help her because it would mean touching her boobs. It has always been one of my favorite stories. I don't know how many of you have seen Mike the Situation Sorrentino's performance on the roast of Donald Trump last year, but a more awkward moment has not yet been committed. Ugh. Oh man. It's so sad. I very nearly had a bit of sympathy for him towards the end, but not really. You're right. That was extremely awkward for everyone involved, even home viewers. Junior year of high school. There was this really nice guy who had been trying for years to make the basketball team. He was a senior. We'll call him Jay. After tryouts, the coaches went into the locker room and announced names. If your name was called, you went into the locker room for a pep talk and were cut from the team. Usually the team had 12 people. There were 13 of us standing around, and then the coaches popped their heads out and said they were done and went back into the locker room. Jay lit up, huge smile on his face and starts jumping for joy. This was his dream. He had been the manager for the prior 3 years and he finally gets to play. After about 5 minutes, the coaches pop back out. Sorry, we made a mistake. Jay, could we see they had missed his name on the list, and he wound up getting cut. That's really sad. My GF had just gotten a job and decided to take me out to an expensive dinner as a treat. Almost as soon as we're seated we notice the couple at the table next to us have quite a few years between them, the guy being much older. Halfway through our dinner their conversation starts to turn for the worst. We just pick up on little things like, "Woman, I can't do this anymore. Man, you knew what this was from the start." This made us think they were just in a rough spot in their relationship until my GF noticed the man was wearing a ring and the woman wasn't. Then we heard, "You said you were going to leave her for me." At this point they've caught a significant number of tables' attention and the guy was realizing this too. The guy then stands up, slaps an envelope on the table, says well happy freaking birthday, and walks out. Pretty darn awkward for what was supposed to be a nice dinner for me and my GF. TLDR. Older man takes out younger mistress to fancy dinner and ends things very publicly. I created one, but didn't stay around to see the aftermath. I was planning to buy my wife a KitchenAid stand mixer, and I heard that they recently went on sale at Sam's. The advertisement said that they would no longer carry that particular model, and it was the one she wanted. You know, the one that raises the bowl up rather than just leaning the gear assembly back. Anyway, I found the mixers. With only 5 left, there were about 10 women standing around bitching about who deserved them the most and trying to work it out. I walked in through them like a boss and took one down and walked off. I heard the cat fight commence behind me as I was leaving that aisle. Wife still has the mixer, and that was about 5 years ago. Dang good mixer. Cool guys don't look at explosions. When I was a senior in high school, a friend of mine was browsing through Pornhub, you know, doing his thing, when he made a shocking discovery. A well-known girl who had graduated a few years before was starring in a P called 18-Year-Old Cutie Makes Her First P. You can imagine our surprise. The links were shared around and soon everyone had witnessed this young upstanding college freshman getting fricked in the butt. This went on for a while. We heard that it got so bad for her that she had to leave her university and come home for a couple months. Things blew over. We graduated. I spent the summer working at the local frozen yogurt shop when a familiar looking girl with red hair and her whole family, little sisters, parents and all, walked in. I couldn't place her. I asked her repeatedly where I knew her from. I held up the line questioning her for information. Did she play soccer? Did she come to get yogurt often? Was she friends with this person? Or this person? Or this person? I didn't understand the mortified look on her face, and didn't notice her whole family glaring daggers in my direction. Finally, it hit me. She didn't play soccer. She got fricked by a big black dong on the internet. I let out an audible then gasped at my mistake. She promptly snapped, "Is any of your yogurt sugar free?" I replied no, and I've never seen someone storm out of the store so quickly. I hope you at least tried to cover yourself. I mean, almost anything other than a gasping silence. Oh, you went to my high school. Dang, kids ain't got no class anymore. Watched a first date turn sour when the guy asked to split the bill. I was out with a bunch of friends at a nice restaurant for my friend's birthday. We were just finishing up our first round of pre-dinner drinks when we noticed this couple getting very close, touching, smiles everywhere, hand holding, etc. Things were clearly going very well, and they decided to share some fondue. A terrible idea in and of itself. Don't get me started on fondue. This pair is clearly very into one another, sharing their food, feeding each other fondue, etc. Then, it happens. Sometime during our main course, the guy at the other table asks for the check, and then asks the girl if she's comfortable splitting the bill. She apparently consents, but is clearly very put off by this question. All touching immediately stops. The girl pulls out her smartphone, and the awkward silence at the next table over begins. The server took like 5-10 minutes to come back with a check, and in that time, both the guy and the girl sat on their phones the entire time. I don't think more than 5 words were exchanged between the two of them for the rest of the night. The whole time, here we are, a group of 8 seriously buzzed friends, whispering and pointing at this super awkward formerly budding relationship, clearly just gossiping away about what just happened. I find it hard to believe they wouldn't have noticed, but clearly they were either too embarrassed or too engrossed in ignoring all things outside their phones to acknowledge what had happened. Easily one of my favorite awkward stories. I've actually got 2 awkward stories to tell. 1. I was getting my hair cut by my barber. I've been going to him for a few years, so I knew a little bit about him. So he's cutting my hair, and this woman walks by, and he makes some comment along the lines of I'd like to take her out. She was pretty hot, but I knew he was married. He had his wedding ring on, and he had a picture of his wife on the shelf. So I said jokingly, "Aren't you married?" He gets quiet, takes off his wedding ring, and puts the picture face down. Apparently his wife had just left him. So, yeah, not much conversation after that. 2. I was at work, and a co-worker is coughing pretty bad. I said to him, "You're not dying on us, are you?" Jeff he laughs and says, "No, I don't think so." A week later he finds out he has terminal liver cancer that's spread to other parts of his body. He was a real nice guy and it was a shame. Totally called it though. That's the spirit. I grew up in a college town and used to sneak into keggers. I got busted by the police doing something stupid when I was 13 and had to go on probation for a year. Sometime into that year I went into a house that seemed to have a big enough party that I wouldn't be noticed. Straight to the back where the beer was. I was caught, told it wasn't that kind of party, and escorted out. Lo and behold, my probation officer was on the porch having a beer with friends. Turned out it was her party. Awkward conversation ensued, I guess. I was on a metro bus in Seattle when a crazy homeless guy hops on in the ride-free area. He begins talking to himself, then saying crazy crap to other riders. The driver calls him up to the front and tells him to get off. They argue briefly, but he eventually leaves. The woman sitting across from me says to her friend, "God, I hate that crap." He was staring out the window and says, "What?" Woman replies, "When people act like that." Man. Who? Woman. That 10. Then the large black man sitting directly behind her says, "What?" Woman. "Oh, I wasn't. I mean I didn't." Black man. "No, you just didn't see me sitting right behind you here. I was 3 stops from home and got off immediately. Didn't want to see how that one played out." "You should have stayed to see how it played out." She probably said no because he called her dirtpet. As for my own personal embarrassing moment to have witnessed, a guy walked into my store one day, sat down to have a game of Settlers, and crapped the floor. He literally spilled semi-solid flan-like poo all over our carpet straight from his butt. He actually had the balls to come back after and apologize. 2. I was in a park and a guy kicked a ball near me and asked me to kick it back, but my foot was asleep so I pretended I couldn't hear him and stared at the ground while he made the walk over. Good times. LOL WTF. Probably the worst way to handle that situation. In junior HS, the kid that sat directly in front of me was a very awkward kid. He would randomly spaz out, yell stuff, and talk to himself. One day in math class he was talking to himself louder than usual and the teacher asked what the problem was. He stood up and said, "I need to go to the bathroom." The teacher for some reason did not want to let him leave the classroom and told him to sit down. 2 minutes later he raised his hand. Not being called on, he got up and once again said, "I need to go to the bathroom." The teacher told him to be quiet and to sit down. Another few minutes passed and he stood up and said, "Yo, I really need to go to the bathroom." The teacher got angry and told him to shut up and sit down. The kid sat down and uttered something to himself. A few minutes passed and he kept flinching and getting really jittery. Then suddenly he turned around and just looked at everyone with a giant grin. And soon after the room started to reek of crap and urine. A short time after the grin he grabbed his book bag and just ran out of the room, leaving a trail of pee and a pool of urine where he was sitting. He missed school for a few days after that. Nobody really asked about the incident and we just chalked it up to him having some sort of mental disorder. I ran into him years later at a college party, and turns out he was perfectly normal and just liked to frick with people. The whole pee crap incident was him wanting to get out of a test. TL. DR. Guy crap and pee in class to get out of a test. Or maybe the test thing was an excuse to seem a bit more normal and not be known as that weird kid that crap himself in class. Dunno if this one counts. On a trip to Disney World with 4 friends of mine in the GF, I had planned to pop the question without telling anyone. Couldn't trust him to keep a secret. So the trip goes off without a hitch. We get to the spot I picked. Epcot World Pavilion, China, on a small bamboo bridge over a small stream with a large koi pond. He says yes and is ecstatic. My friends, only 2 of the 4 were with us, kind of gave a different response. My friend Jen ran up to both of us and gave us big hugs and got all soppy-eyed, but her BF literally said to me, "Did you do what I think you just did?" with the slightest hint of a frown. I replies of course. Why he doesn't reply for a few minutes, then gives me a half-assed grats and a pat on the shoulder. He never told me, as we ended up not speaking with them only a few months after the engagement. I then find out they got married and heard that I had perhaps fricked up his proposal plans. Whoops. A week before my friend gets married, we're all out drinking minus his faints. One other friend's girlfriend gets too drunk and decides now's a good time to tell him that nobody likes his girlfriend. We all think she's a B and he shouldn't marry her. Man, did that kill the night. Unfortunately it was all true. I have the same story, only I'm the drunk girlfriend and the fiance was there. They got divorced in 8 months. Was standing around at graduation next to 2 guys whose names were alphabetically very close to mine. We're staring out into the parking lot making casual small talk when a lady drives by in a Suburban. The guy to my right goes, "Holy crap, that's the most disgusting, hideous piece of crap I've ever seen." I thought that was a dude for a second. "People like that deserve to die," the other guy quietly says. "Dude, that's my mom." I knew it was his mom too because she worked as a lunch lady in the cafeteria. It was so incredibly mean and unfortunate that I just froze for a few seconds, died a little on the inside, and walked away. I was in Spain with a former girlfriend. We are on the beach in Nerja. People were gathered around pointing at an object in the sea. After many exchanges, a lot of people thought that someone was drowning. I grabbed someone's float, after deciding that no one was doing anything, and proceeded to enter the choppy waters Baywatch style. After a run and a dive I managed 2 strokes. I was unceremoniously dumped back on the beach whilst being watched by the holiday-making crowd coughing and spluttering. Trying to recover my pride, a young strapping Adonis then entered the water, without obvious bravado swam out, got to what we thought was a drowning boy, only to find it was a multicolored ball. He swam back to rapturous applause. He struts up to me and lifts me off, carrying me like a bride. The beach consoles me for 15 minutes. For the rest of the holiday I was known as the black man who couldn't swim. Go figure the stereotype. Saw a proposal at a basketball game once. During the kiss cam, the poor guy must have set it up beforehand because they were the last couple to appear. They cut the music. He got down on one knee and presented the ring, as one does. She turned white, put her hands up to her face, and promptly turned and ran up the steps to the exit. He quickly shoved the ring in his pocket and chased after her. The worst part though, as he was running up the steps, they hit the buzzer. Break up. I personally would have chosen the Price is Right trombone. Wah 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 wah. My boyfriend and I went into 7-Eleven to get some snacks, and while I paid he talked to a guy behind the counter that he knew from high school. Last time we were in, the guy's wife was pregnant, so my boyfriend asked something like, "So, have that new kid yet?" Turns out the guy's wife had miscarried, which he solemnly told my boyfriend. "But we're going to try again," he said. Now I always have to go into 7-Eleven alone to check to see if the guy's there or not before my boyfriend will join me. It wasn't his fault. He shouldn't avoid him. My husband and I were at the Outback and could tell the couple sitting next to us was on their awkward first date. They ordered an awesome blossom appetizer. When the appetizer arrived, the guy said to his date in a sheepish, awkward voice, "I I think you're an awesome blossom." She didn't even give him a courtesy laugh, just kind of stared downward and picked at the food. His half smile faded and they continued to eat in silence. "That's so cute. If someone said that to me, I'd give him a big ol' smooch. That broad sense of whimsy is broken." My favorite moment was in New Orleans and a couple near me asked a stranger to take their picture. They held apart in pose for 40 seconds and then asked if he knew which button to push. He said he did and they went back to their painfully staged wacky pose for 30 more seconds and he held back taking the pic. They asked again and then the guy showed him which button to push. The couple gets back into their spontaneous wild time pose and hold it for 30 more seconds until the guy drops the pose and heads toward the guest photographer who snaps a picture of the guy's chest. I couldn't tell if the photographer was an idiot or troll. Either way, I was laughing. So first some background. My 7th grade English teacher was this really awesome and laid back guy who pretty much lets us do what we want. So I often played games with my friends while also doing research and whatnot. One day he had a sub who wasn't really paying attention. So what the heck? Me and my friends decide to play truth or dare. It goes well at first and we have some good laughs. But then it happened. One of my friends dares me to pick a random girl in the class, pull her hair, and yell, "Is that a wig?" So I do. I find some random chick, proceed to yank off her wig, and proclaim for the whole class to hear, "Is that a wig? Holy crap, I've made a huge mistake. She actually has a wig." I slowly walk back to my seat and sit down. The girl runs from the classroom crying, "Room. That was not a fun day. TLDR. Played truth or dare, ended up yanking off some chick's wig." I never understand why people do this. My 7th grade English teacher was this really awesome and laid back guy who pretty much lets us do what we want. But he's not in this story. I picked up a girl in my car for a quickie after chatting her up on MSN. We went to a secluded parking lot, did the horizontal hustle, and we finished by me in her mouth and she downed my entire delivery. When I asked if she wanted to go home, she said no, just drop me off with my boyfriend. I didn't know she was seeing anyone, so the car ride was awkward enough at that point. But when I dropped her off, she ran up to her boyfriend and gave him a full-on tongue kiss. She didn't have water or gum or a mint in between either. I felt bad for that guy. So awkward to watch. I was eating lunch with some friends a couple years ago when one of them gets a text from another friend. Still looking down at the text, he says, "Did you guys hear about Derp?" Derp was a guy we went to high school with that used to talk a lot of crap to me and tried to get me jumped a few times. I said, "No, why?" I hope he did everyone a favor and shot himself. Well, he had. Well, that was awfully nice of him to do for everyone. I was at Red Lobster with a friend of mine when I overheard the waitress ask the lady at the table next to us when she was due. The lady started to cry and said that she was not pregnant, just fat. The waitress apologized and went away. The woman's man friend tried consoling her by telling her that she's not fat, she's just a little chubby. The waitress, who is black, returns and keeps apologizing, going on and on. It would have been best if she had just dropped it, but no. The waitress goes on to tell the woman that the brothers in her hood would love to meet a big girl like her and that it's a good thing being mistaken as being pregnant, that the fellas like big butts. The woman and her man friend got up and left. When I was 16, I started seeing this girl that lived a few states away. After a few years of long distance calls and train rides, she decided to call it off. Being the naive boy that I was, I continued to call once a week or so, always getting one of her parents saying that she wasn't available. They were the nicest people. I eventually got the hint. A few months later, Christmas came around and I thought it to be a good idea to call and wish them a Merry Christmas, really just wanting to get a hold of my ex. I left a message along the lines of "Merry Christmas, hope all is well." Later that day I get a call from her. At first I was happy to hear her voice, but when she started talking I felt sick. Apparently she had moved out of her parents' house and moved in with a guy she worked with shortly after we broke up. All that time I was calling her parents' house. They didn't have the heart to tell me why she couldn't come to the phone. It was the most embarrassing moment in my life. A few years down the road I find out she had a kid with this guy, conceived around the time of our breakup. After some internet sleuthing I found a pic of the two of them and the kid. I was well over her by this time, but something about that picture boiled my blood. The guy was wearing my $90 university hoodie that I had long been looking for. That be, a good hoodie is worth its weight in gold. The awkward moment was completely my fault. A co-worker's adult son had recently died. The funeral was on a weekend. The following Monday I see the guy and kinda automatically say hey, have a good weekend, and right about the time I am saying weekend my brain is screaming inside my head, shut up you freaking idiot, he was burying his kid. Ugh. Felt terrible. Many years ago, I was waiting for a platform to be announced for my massively delayed train at Euston Station, and one of the trains just arrived. I noticed this dorky looking guy next to me getting really excited. He was wearing a red scarf, carrying a red rose, and pretending to read Harry Potter, though he kept glancing anxiously to the platform where people were disembarking, obviously looking for someone. I got the feeling that he was meeting someone from online, or at least someone he hadn't met before, and the red scarf, Rose and Harry Potter were meant to be how they would recognize each other. Whoever he was, he wasn't on that train, or the one after, or the one after. His excited anxiousness was so terribly touching and awkward, and his dawning realization that the person who he was waiting for was never going to arrive was absolutely heartbreaking. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.